The upcoming Artelia Pyrrhus, The Alchemist of the Mysterious Journey, will be the 18th main series Artelia title. This series has been running for longer than most people know, due to far less than 18 titles making their way to the West. The first game in the series, Artelia Marie, The Alchemist of Salburg, was released in May of 1997 on the PlayStation 1, but the series wouldn't debut in the West until 2005 with the PS2 title Artelia Iris Eternal Mana. The first 5 main series titles never released outside of Japan, and if you're a poor Australian like I am, you missed out on an additional 2 titles, making it 7 in total, while those in Europe only missed out on 6. The 2 titles that didn't release in all Western markets were also the only 2 games to have a completely different naming scheme. They were called Mana Khemia, while all titles before and after these 2 are titled Artelia and then a name. It's also not known why the 2 Mana Khemia games never released in Australia and Europe, as all the main series titles before and after these 2 games have been released worldwide in all regions. Artelia games are split up into groups based on the world they take place in. For example, Artelia Rorona, Totori and Maruru are all a part of the Arland series, while Artelia Aisha, Eshalogi and Shali are all a part of the Dusk series. However, the games are made in such a way that you do not need to play all the games within a series to understand the story. Some are prequels, some are sequels set many years in the future, but whatever the case may be, each game tells its own standalone story. Between 1997 and 2011, the amount of games in each series followed a predictable pattern of 3-2-3-2. Salburg had 3 games, Gramnad had 2 games, Iris had 3, Mana had 2, Arland had 3, and then the Dusk series became a combo breaker and also had 3 games. The latest series kicked off with Artelia Sophie, The Alchemist of the Mysterious Book, with the next title, Artelia Pyrrhus, The Alchemist and the Mysterious Journey, is due out in March. It's unknown at this time if we will slip back into a pattern or get a 3rd title to round out another trilogy. In 2001, Cool Kids released a Sega Dreamcast version of the first 2 Artelia games bundled together exclusively in Japan. It was called Artelia Marie and Ellie, The Alchemists of Salburg, and it sounds like a pretty good deal. But the 2 games weren't the only thing it came bundled with. One of the discs in the pack contained a crippling computer virus. It didn't affect the Dreamcast console at all, but the disc could also be inserted into a PC in order to download songs, pictures and screensavers. Anybody unlucky enough to insert the disc into their Windows PC and download one of the screensavers would have their computer infected with the Kriz virus. This virus works quickly to infect as many Windows files as it can, and it remains nearly undetectable or indestructible, as it was able to rewrite a system file that not even an antivirus program of the time could interact with. Then, on December 25th, yes, Christmas Day, as soon as you power on or restart your computer, the virus overwrites all files on your hard drives, floppy disks, network drives and USB sticks with junk files. It then attempts to flash your BIOS, permanently corrupting it and preventing your computer from even powering up, meaning the only fix was to replace the entire motherboard. Even those lucky enough to not have their BIOS corrupted would have to reconfigure their system to boot up again, only to find that all their files were gone and replaced with junk, including any backups they might have had on removable drives or networked storage. A virus that attacks on Christmas Day was especially coincidental, as the game was released in late November just in time for Christmas. It is unknown how the virus came to be attached to one of the screensavers on the disc, but the best explanation given is that one of the developers was likely working on a PC that was already infected with the Kriz virus. Although it was a Japan-only release, many copies found themselves around the world due to the collectible nature of the special edition pack. Cool Kids apologized and issued a recall from store shelves. They also advised consumers to return their copies to the place of purchase. Unfortunately for anybody who imported it, this might have been impossible. Cool Kids only had one piece of advice for anybody in that position: destroy it. There have been a number of side games and spin-off titles released in Japan, including another 3 games in the Salburg series. The side games were most often developed for handheld platforms, with a few exceptions, and they also very often were released on less popular or growing platforms. There were several Artelia games made for PC using newer or experimental software in the early 2000s. A game was released for compatible Japanese mobile phones in 2006. In 2012 they launched an Artelia game exclusive to the Japanese social social network Gree, and there was even a WonderSwan color release. There were also releases on the more traditional handheld platforms like the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, PSP, and Nintendo DS. The most interesting side story releases were a group of Atelier games made for the Nintendo DS. The trilogy of games is referred to as the DS series. The thing that makes this interesting is that not a single side story or spin-off title was ever localized, except for one game in this series. The localized version of Atelier Annie, Alchemist of Serra Island, was released only in North America on October 27, 2009. It never saw a release in Europe or other regions, and was an odd choice since it was actually the second game in the DS trilogy. NIS America were responsible for all Atelier ports at the time, and while they never took any steps to localize any side story titles before, it was likely the booming success of the Nintendo DS in the US that led to an increased interest in localizing handheld games, and Atelier Annie just happened to be the latest Atelier DS release at the time. Nevertheless, given Atelier Annie's limited region-exclusive release, it is now very hard to find and commands quite a high price tag. In fact, while doing research for this video, I never saw this game listed on any rarest or most expensive DS games list, but based on my findings, it would easily slot into the top 5 most expensive. It more or less matches the market price of the very well documented rare DS RPG Dokapon Journey, with the used copies averaging between $50 and $90, and a sealed copy setting a collector back around $130 US. The Atelier series is fairly unique among JRPGs of its type in that it has been able to slip past ratings boards almost completely uncensored and unchanged from the Japanese versions, even though the writing usually contains a lot of sexual themes and the game itself having its fair share of fan service. The most frequent change is that of character age. Even though the character models, costumes, behaviour, and animations all remain unchanged, their listed age in the character menu is often bumped up to make them young adults, rather than children. In Atelier Rorona, for example, all of the characters in the game had 3 years added to their listed age, bumping Rorona from 14 to 17, Cordelia from 13 to 16, and so on. This minor change is likely one born out of taste and what is acceptable in the West. Using Rorona as an example again, there are many sexually driven conversations between Rorona and some of the adult characters in the game. There are even not so subtle hints and implications that an adult female character had relations with Rorona, though this was meant to be humorous and not malicious. Even though Rorona looks the same as she does in the Japanese version, the dialogue is far more palatable to a Western audience when they are told she is 17 rather than 14. The age rating for Atelier Rorona actually went on to become an internet meme. When the title was first released on PlayStation 3 in Australia, it was given a PG rating. This stands for Parental Guidance, which has no age restrictions, it's just a recommendation. Sometime after this, the Australian government passed a new law allowing an R rating for video games, restricting the purchase to only those 18 or older. When the PlayStation Vita remake of Atelier Rorona was released digitally in Australia after the new law, it was given an R rating. The Australian Ratings Board listed the reason for the adults-only rating as high-impact sexual violence. This was likely due to the conversation between Rorona and the other female character I alluded to earlier, as no such depiction of any sexual violence occurs in-game. This of course started controversy as news outlets started picking up the story. It then reached meme status as Reddit and other large communities began showing close-ups of anime or gaming characters with suggestive faces and plastering the words high-impact sexual violence on them. Of course, there were also pictures of the very PG-rated parts of Atelier Rorona plastered with the same words for maximum effect. The high-impact sexual violence tag was actually dropped by the Australian government shortly after this, and replaced with references to sexual violence. They never confirmed it was the online controversy that forced the change, or if Koei Tecmo had appealed. In any case, we can assume the reason it was dropped was to avoid misleading consumers, though the R rating still remained. Thanks for watching! If there is a game or series you think I should tackle in a future episode, jump down into the comments section and let me know. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked this video, and if you enjoy my content you could consider supporting my channel on Patreon. Other than that, I'll see you all soon.